Welcome back in. It is week 3. It is Sunday. Kickoff is about an hour away. Thought I'd jump on here and get to some start sit questions before the week goes live. Once everything locks. So just go ahead and get to it. First things first, just want to hit on really quickly is some of the injuries for week 3. Pretty simple. A lot of these guys we've known about in advance, but Zach Charbonnet is doubtful. Doubt he plays. And then Brock Purdy also doubtful. But then Jade Daniels, Evan Ingram, Juwan Jennings, who was just ruled out, which makes which makes Ricky Pearsall an excellent play. Xavier Worthy was ruled out. Isaiah Likely questionable. I put him on here. Nobody's playing Jalen Royals, but he is questionable for tonight. And then Emeka Egbuka, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and DeAndre Swift are all expected to play. So let's go ahead and just get to some of these questions here right out of the jump. And we're going to start with J2 Nice. Good morning. Good morning to you. Start Ashton Jeanty or Jordan Mason. I still lean Ashton Jeanty, but I also understand if you want to go Jordan Mason. Uh, it is a big boost that they got Christian Darrisaw back for this game. He is a huge part, obviously, their left tackle. He has been out the first 2 weeks. We get Carson Wentz, playing in this game. I wouldn't fault anybody if you want to go Jordan Mason because at least as it sounds right now that that Jordan Mason is going to be the workhorse back. I mean, there's nobody else behind him in this backfield right now. And so he is going to get all the touches. And we did see Jeanty last week, only get about, I think it was 58% of the snaps. It was a little bit, you have guys mixing in there. And so I don't hate it if you want to go Jordan Mason. Is it a risk? Sure. But I don't think it's a crazy one. I think it's pretty close. I have Jeanty as a borderline top 12 running back this week, and so I don't mind it at all if you want to go with Ashton Jeanty or if you want to go Jordan Mason over Ashton Jeanty. It makes sense. And also, who just flex? I got Cortland Sutton, Marvin Harrison Jr., Hollywood Brown, and Omarion Hampton. So I actually think this is a really good spot for Hampton. The Broncos' run defense, especially their interior, has really struggled this year. We saw it last week with Jonathan Taylor, who ripped off a bunch of yardage from them. It's been the area that really suits Hampton really well. But at the same time, he also hasn't played very well. So I would probably be less likely to play him. I think I would go with Cortland Sutton. I actually think this Chargers and Broncos game is the second highest total on the slate. It's kind of the game that everybody has not really talked a lot about this week. But I think I would go with Sutton here in this spot. I think this game could actually shoot out a little bit. I like Cortland Sutton here. So I think I would stick with Cortland Sutton here over the other options you have. Brunel, morning, guys. I need one at wide receiver 2 and one at flex. Who would you start? Tedero McMillan, Adunze, or Jordan May. Oh, my goodness. Brunel, who are you starting at your other positions right now? Because I love McMillan, I love Odunze, and I love Jordan Mason this week. I love all 3. Um, if I had to choose, I'd probably go Odunze and Jordan Mason. It's tough because I love McMillan as well. Like McMillan's a top 20 wide receiver for me. So who are you starting at your other spots? I'm just curious to see if there's any way we could fit McMillan in here because I want to play all 3 of these guys. And who are you starting at running back? If you can tell me that as well. Just kind of see here who are some of the options that you may have because I love 3 of those for sure. Odunze has been an absolute baller. Clearly the number 1 wide receiver. The Cowboys secondary is absolutely dreadful. That game has by far the highest total on the slate, almost by 5 points. So, I want to play players from that game, but same time, we can only play 2 of them. Those would be the 2 that I would go with. Noel, start 1 tight end, 2 flex, full PPR. Juwan Johnson, Jake Ferguson, Terry McLaurin, Emeka Egbuka, Calvin Ridley. And you happen to have both tight ends that I absolutely love this week too. Love Juwan Johnson, love Jake Ferguson. I would go with Jake Ferguson at tight end. I have him at 7. I have Juwan Johnson at 8. And then there are 2 flex spots. So the last time we saw Marcus Mariota play, he absolutely peppered Terry McLaurin with targets last year. It was like he had almost a 40% target share in the game that Marcus Mariota played in. Now, obviously, his offense is a little bit different. Now we have Debo Samuel in the mix, so things are a little bit different in terms of just schematically and how things were used last year. But I think this could be a nice jumping off spot for Terry McLaurin this week. So against the Raiders, and we know the Raiders secondary is not very good at all. And so I think I would go with McLaurin here. And then the other flex, I would go with Emeka Egbuka. I know there was some concern with him, but he is expected to play. And I just cannot. I mean, I think there's a real shot that we see Sauce Gardner shadow Mike Evans, which would leave, the better coverage for Emeka Egbuka. I actually like always, like I said, I would just consider playing both tight ends because I think they're both really good plays, but I think I would go Jake Ferguson, McLaurin, and Egbuka here. Half point PPR, Mike Evans or Tony Pollard. I would still go with Mike Evans here. I like Tony Pollard, actually. I think that his numbers don't back up the way he's played. Now, the thing that worries me with him, though, even though it's a half point PPR, it's not as big of a concern. But Tony Pollard's not being utilized in the passing game at all. I think he has 1 or 2 targets so far in the year, even though he's running 65% of the routes. They're just not looking for him in terms of getting the ball to him through the air. So it does make it a little bit less. Mike Evans, though, is also hasn't really produced at the level we expect. But all the usage numbers are there. Like he's still being heavily looked at. His target share, his first read target share is incredible. They're still looking to him inside the red zone as well. So I do like Mike Evans here. I think I would go with Mike Evans over Tony Pollard. Fantasy Gurus, what's up, fellas? Kraft or Ferg, full PPR. I feel like Cowboys game might be a shootout and Kraft might be limited, but Kraft is obviously the better tight end. Yeah, I think there's that concern with Tucker Kraft that, like, I don't think anybody thought he was going to play. Some of the verbiage that was used by Matt LaFleur was very much like it sounded like he was going to miss, like he was going to miss maybe a couple of weeks. So I think a lot of people were shocked that he was actually going to play today. So there is the risk there. And now this is what I will say about that game is that, they are playing the Browns. The only question I would have is, do the Browns push them? But I also think they throw the ball at a pretty high rate because like we saw last week against the Ravens, the Browns run defense has been elite. They have limited Derrick Henry and Chase Brown to 33, it's like 33 and a half yards per game, no touchdowns given up. Now it's only 2 weeks of data. So, obviously that could change, but at least from what we've seen so far, it's looked really good. And so I do think they throw the ball a lot. Like if you're worried off now, I think I would still play Tucker Kraft because if he must be good enough, if they're actually going to put him out there. But if your gut's telling you to go with Jake Ferguson, I have no problem. I moved Tucker Kraft down a little bit. I had him originally at 2. I moved him down to 6, but I have Jake Ferguson at 7. So if you felt more comfortable going Jake Ferguson, because I totally agree with you. I think that everything's set up for this Bears and Cowboys game to be an absolute shootout. But I will also say a lot of times whenever we expect that, it doesn't happen. So there is that. But either way, I think the game environment is probably better for Jake Ferguson. But Tucker Kraft, I still think, has the higher ceiling of the two. Will, another big win last night for the old Mizzou Tigers. 29-20. Was a little nervous there for a little bit during that game, especially with how bad the secondary looked, but they got it done. So, anyways, Tyler Warren or Juwan Johnson. I would go Tyler Warren. I have Tyler Warren as my tight end 3 this week. He's just been the focal point of this offense and love the matchup against Tennessee. As I've mentioned, I love Juwan Johnson. The dude's been absolutely peppered with targets as well. It's not a terrible matchup against the Seahawks, but is on the road. So I do prefer Tyler Warren here. Now, Ron, morning, Mac Jones or Marcus Mariota, QB2, Superflex, PPR. I do have some concern with all the pass catchers that are out for San Francisco. It does make him a little bit more limited with Juwan Jennings ruled out. And I will say, Marcus Mariota last year in his one start that he got, he scored over 20 fantasy points. Like I actually think this is a good spot for Mariota. I'm probably because like in the DFS world, like Marcus Mariota is like going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks of the weekend, and that's mainly due to price, but that's not what we're talking about here. But either way, it's a great matchup against the Raiders. Mariota obviously will use his legs. I would actually go Mariota here over Mac Jones. I have Mariota. I have him at QB 13 in my rankings. I thought about putting him at top 12, just couldn't get there. But I like Mariota, and I have Mac Jones at quarterback 19. So I don't hate Mac Jones, but I would actually go with Marcus Mariota here as your QB2. Walito, Devonta Smith or Keenan Allen. I think it's a little bit of a bump down now that Dallas Goedert is active here. I would actually go Keenan Allen. Great schematic matchup. More than likely, we're going to see a lot more the Pat Surtain's shadow coverage is probably coming for Quentin Johnson, who plays on the outside. Keenan Allen's going to mix more into the slot, as well as which Pat Surtain does not go into. And so I really like Keenan Allen here. I think this is another really good spot for him. We already know the obvious rapport that he has with Justin Herbert. And so I would go with Keenan Allen here over Devonta Smith, though I do love this Eagles and Rams game. Anthony, I need to start Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner, or Ricky Pearsall. I think now that we got the news that Juwan Jennings is out, I would go with Ricky Pearsall here. I just think that he's probably going to see easily 10 plus targets now. Christian McCaffrey gets the boost as well with this. But Conner, it's just really hard to trust him with the role that he's seeing now. It's turned into a 60-40 split. He's not really being utilized in the passing game. That's more Trey Benson. And so, like, I just think he's more of a low-end RB2. And then Marvin Harrison is extremely boomer bust. I don't hate it. Don't hate the matchup. But I think I would go with Ricky Pearsall here. And looks like maybe T. Higgins is also in that mix. I would still go Ricky Pearsall over T. Higgins. With Jake Browning starting at quarterback, I actually think the person who gets the decrease, I think, here's probably T. Higgins. I don't know if Jake Browning can support multiple pass catchers. Jake Browning is going to get the ball out of his hands at an incredibly high pace. Last week, his time to throw was the lowest in the league. He just gets the ball out of his hands incredibly quick. He's looking to check down. You're going to see a lot of crossers and breaking routes for Jamar Chase, trying to utilize him in space. And then Chase Brown is also going to be a benefit of that. I think T. Higgins is probably the one that gets hurt the most from this, at least right out the gate. So I'm a little bit lower on T. Higgins. I think he's more of like a wide receiver 3. Egbuka or Sutton? Man, that's close. I actually think I'll go Courtland Sutton here. It is really close between Egbuka and Sutton. But like I've said, I think this game has potential to shoot out. Where I don't know if this Jets game really does with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Chip, Tet or Jacoby Myers. I actually love Jacoby Myers here, but I'm going to go Tet McMillan with now I can't think of his name. Being ruled out, the cornerback. It's going to bother me. AJ Terrell. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. AJ Terrell is being ruled out. That is a big bump for Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan also has already looked great so far this year. And so I would go Tet McMillan pretty easily here for me. Big Truz, afternoon, gentlemen. Should I start May or Nix? Also, what are y'all's thoughts on Jaden Blue? I mean, Jaden Blue, I think, is just a hold if you have enough bench spots. If you're in a league with a lot of bench spots or a deeper than 12 teams, I think he's okay to hold. But at this point, I mean, he's been a healthy scratch. We haven't seen the inactives yet for the Cowboys and Bears game because it's a 3:00 game. But I would expect that he's probably a healthy scratch again. And I don't think he's somebody you have to have on your roster. He's decent. Like if it's a deeper league with enough bench spots, like I probably want to hold him. So I think eventually he's going to get some run here in this backfield. But as of right now, I think he's somebody you can drop. And then May or Nix, this is going to be Drake May. He just looked better than Bo Nix. Bo Nix has looked a little bit rough so far to start the year. He has not looked as good as he did last year. And Drake May, I think this matchup here, the Steelers, we look at the Steelers and we think, oh man, this is incredible defense. But this defense is incredibly banged up. And they just haven't looked very good at all so far this year. And so I would go with Drake May over Bo Nix. Victor, Matthew Golden or Ramondre Stevenson, full PPR. I would go with Ramondre just with the usage that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Now they're even utilizing him in the passing game. I don't hate Matthew Golden. I think some of the Matthew Golden stuff, I mean, his average separation stuff is best in the league. Like he's getting a ton of separation. Jordan Love just hasn't hit him. I mean, last week, easily Matthew Golden could have scored 2 touchdowns if Jordan Love would have connected on those throws. But I still would go with Ramondre. I think he's just a little bit safer of a pick. Mike, half point PPR, Chase Brown or Jordan Mason. I would go with Chase Brown. Is there any way you could? Is there any other options that we could fit Jordan Mason into this? Because I mean, I have Jordan Mason as a top 15 running back this week, but I still think I would prefer Chase Brown. We talked about with Jake Browning, he's still going to see a lot of dump offs here within this. He's still going to see a ton of dump offs here. He's going to see a lot of usage, and so I still would probably prefer Chase Brown. But Jordan Mason is not far behind. My only concern with Jordan Mason is we just don't know if he's going to be utilized in the passing game. When he was with San Francisco, he was never utilized in the passing game. I don't know if all of a sudden he sees a significant bump in that. It'll be something to monitor with this situation. But I mean, I think it's close, but I would still prefer Chase Brown. This is my starters of now: May, Genty, Chase Brown, and then Nico, Rome, Flex is Mason, Bates, and Green Bay defense. Scroll up really quick. So T Mac, Ibuka, Dunze, Mason. This could be ballsy there, Brunil, but maybe you sit Ashton Genty for Jordan Mason and then flex Tet McMillan. Like, I know there's obviously the risk there with Genty and everything, but just on the surface, I like that more as a play. I know you didn't say if it's like full PPR or half point PPR. I assume it's full PPR. If it's full PPR, I think I would do that. I just love the ceiling for Tet McMillan this week and Odunze. I want to get them into my lineups. I'm not sitting Nico Collins, and so I think that's the easiest way to make it happen. So maybe you look to do that. It is a risk, but I don't hate it. Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence. I don't love this spot here against Texans defense. I would go with Mac Jones over Trevor Lawrence. I know Trevor Lawrence wasn't terrible last week. People talk about him like he was absolutely terrible. He wasn't great, but he still almost got 20 fantasy points last week. But this is a different matchup at a different spot. Tyler, Jacobs, Mason, or Kyron, pick two or play all three and bench Stafford. No, I would play the first two actually here. I don't love Josh Jacobs' spot either, but he just sees such an incredible workload. Like, it's easily he could find the end zone and score a touchdown here. And I don't love this spot at all for Kyron. I mean, the Eagles are the league's best run defense, and they really need a positive game script for him to pay off. Now, it doesn't mean he couldn't fall into the end zone and score a touchdown. We've already talked about Jordan Mason. I like Jordan Mason really better than both of them, but I definitely like Jordan Mason better than Kyron. So I would go Jacobs and Mason and start Stafford. I actually think Stafford's a pretty sharp play this week too, if you're needing a quarterback, because I think this offense is going to be able to push the Eagles. And so I really like this spot for Stafford. I'm actually playing him in DFS, but we're not talking about DFS. PPR Flex 1, Ridley, Sutton, Pittman, Mooney, or JCM. Man, with this being a full PPR, I think I'm going to go Cortland Sutton. For me, it comes down to Sutton and Pittman, and then JCM, I think, is also a really interesting play. But at the same time, he went from last week where he only played as like 30% of the snaps. And now, I think people are expecting him to take on this workhorse role. He was never utilized as a pass catcher in college. And it's going to really depend on game script here. And we all have also seen the Raiders have actually been pretty good against the run this year. Now, it's only a 2-game sample. Again, it could not mean anything. Maybe they're not as good as what the numbers show through 2 weeks. But I just don't know how he's going to be utilized in the passing game. And so that's what concerns me in a full PPR. And like I've said about this game with the Chargers, I like this game environment. But Pittman's the other one. I think he's also a really solid play, but I would lean towards Cortland Sutton for me. If it Miss Mel, start Njoku or Ertz, or start Njoku or Ferguson. I'm going to go with Ertz and Ferguson here. I don't mind Njoku. I prefer actually Harold Fannin this week to Njoku. I have Harold Fannin as actually a top 12 tight end. I have him at 12, and I have Njoku at 14. So I mean, I don't hate Njoku. I just like Fannin a little bit more here in this spot. And then as far as Ertz is concerned, I have Zach Ertz at tight end 10. So I like him a little bit more. And like I've already mentioned with Jake Ferguson, I have him at tight end 7. So I would prefer those two. Kanoa, Aloha, start 2, PPR, Renfro, Tootin, Tracy, Benson, Harvey. Team 2, Renfro, Leggett out, or Henderson. Start 3, Dobbs, or Tracy. So Kanoa, this is I'm happy I can say this because I was wanting to see if anybody was going to have some. I didn't want to just bring it up just so people, but I do want to say this. I think if he's sitting out there, which he's still widely available, Dontavian Wicks. And I know that we've played this game before last year with Dontavian Wicks, but this is a perfect schematic matchup for Dontavian Wicks. The Browns play single high, or excuse me, they play man coverage at one of the highest rates in the league. And Dontavian Wicks is the man beater. He's the guy who is the best man coverage tight end or wide receiver. And we saw last week, he actually out targeted and out snapped Romeo Dobbs. I know Romeo Dobbs scored the touchdown. I think the Packers throw the ball at a much higher rate than people are going to expect because of how good the Browns have been. And if I'm desperate for a wide receiver, and with you looking at the options you have here, because I really don't love any of these truly here, I would go pick up Dontavian Wicks if he's sitting out there. So, because I'm not necessarily trusting what Hunter Renfrow did last week, but I will say that if he is and he is widely available, that's the person that's the player I would go pick up and play because I don't really care about. I mean, Xavier Leggett has been absolutely terrible. I don't care that he's out. um, but like he's been out dreadful. But yeah, I get it with Renfro, but I would actually prefer Dontavian Wicks if he's available. I don't know if he is, but in your league. But if he's not, so dealing off who we have here, I would go with Renfro and Tootin, I guess. Like Tracy, I think is interesting, but like it appears that especially after he came out and criticized the coaching staff for how they utilized the goal line role was dictated after week 1, which I think is why we saw Cam Scatteroo take over. And so I think Scatteroo is going to be the lead back here. I think Tootin's going to be the pass catching back. And so I think it's a little less attractive of a spot. Tootin, I think we can feel pretty confident that he's going to see 10 plus touches in this game and looked incredible last week. So I guess if I had to choose, I would go with Renfro and Tootin. And then at team 2, I would go with, I guess, Renfro if that's what I have to do over Henderson. I just can't trust Henderson right now with his workload. And then team 3, I would go with Romeo Dobbs if that's right now. But again, if Wicks is sitting out there, Kanoa, I would go look to add him. And then Strange or Jatavian Sanders will get out. Thanks. I think I would go with Jatavian Sanders here. Saw 9 targets last week. That was incredibly encouraging. So a little bit more of a consolidated target share here within this offense. And you also have, what was it, Bryson Tremaine, I think last week that kind of popped a little bit. Bryson Tremaine. I wouldn't run out and grab him, but he probably sees an uptick in targets. I think he saw 3 of them last week. I think is what it was, 3 or 4 last week for the Panthers. Can we trust Chase Brown this week? Yeah, like I've already talked about here. I think that this actually, I know a lot of people I figured would be concerned with Joe Burrow being out, but with Jake Brown and getting the ball out so incredibly quick. In 2023, when he started 7 games, he targeted the running back 40 times. It's almost 6 targets per game. So I think Chase Brown's going to be fine. I think he's going to continue to see all of the work on the ground. And then I still think you're probably going to see him, especially on early downs, see a little bit more bump of targets as well. So Seattle defense or Colts defense, pick 2 at PPR, Pickens, Hollywood, Judy, Ridley. Thanks. I would go Seattle defense here against the Saints. Really like them. I think they're a top 5 defense this week. I like the Colts as well, but I think I would lean towards Seattle. And then pick 2, it would be Pickens and Hollywood Brown, I guess. With Xavier Worthy out again this week, Brown's still going to see quite a bit of targets here in this spot. They're pretty limited in what they can utilize. And this is a much different, spot here. The Giants secondary is not very good. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, and so I think this is a spot that Hollywood Brown can get going and have a solid game. So I would go with Pickens and Hollywood here over the other two. Chiefs or Bengals, D. I'm not playing the Bengals against the Vikings. I get it. I totally do. But we've seen more often than not with, Nick Mullins in like 3 games with KOC a couple years ago averaged 370 passing yards a game. We saw Josh Dobbs score 20 plus fantasy points a game. I think their slow start had more indicative of JJ McCarthy's struggles than anything else. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is a baller, but we've seen plenty of backup quarterbacks within his system come in and play really well. I would go with the Chiefs here in a really must-win game for them. Emilio, CJ Stroud, Swift, Mooney, Shaheed, or Johnston at flex in a standard league. If I have to pick a quarterback, I'm going to pick a quarterback every time. I'm going to pick CJ Stroud. Don't necessarily love the spot here. Their offensive line is absolutely terrible. I have a lot of question marks with this new offensive coordinator with Nick Caley and some of the stuff he's doing, but I still would roll CJ Stroud here if it's a super flex league. Ron T, thanks. Mark Andrews, Dallas Goddard, or Hunter Henry. Super flex PPR. I'm going to go with Mark Andrews here. I know Mark Andrews has not been very good. I totally get it. A little bit different game environment here against the Lions. I would probably go Mark Andrews. I have him at tight end 13. I have Goddard at 15, and I have Hunter Henry at 16. So I would slight lean towards Mark Andrews and hope that he scores a touchdown. He actually should have scored a touchdown last week. He had it in his hands and it got knocked out, but should have scored last week, and we'd probably feel a little bit different on Mark Andrews if that happened. Andy, Sutton or Ramondre PPR flex? I'm going to go with Sutton here. Already talked about this game. Love this game environment. I'm going to go Cortland Sutton, bounce back spot here against the Chargers. EC, Colts, Bucks, Falcons, DST. I know this is going to be close. Let me bring this up where I have them. I'm going to go with the Bucks here. It's really close. I have the Bucks at my DST 6. I have the Colts at I have the Bucks at 6. I have the Falcons at 9, and I have the Colts at 8. So I would go with the Bucks here in this spot. The Jets defense, or the Jets offensive line, excuse me, is banged up. We know the Bucks are extremely aggressive with Todd Bowles as the head coach. Their defenses always are. They're going to bring plenty of pressure here on this, on this offense, and so I like the Bucks here. Cam Daddy, Hollywood, Terry, or Golden halfway PPR down bad. I would go with Terry McLaurin. Kind of talked about this whenever Mariota started last year. He absolutely peppered McLaurin. The Raiders secondary is absolutely terrible. They've been actually pretty good against the run. I would go with Terry McLaurin here. Full PPR flex. Renfro, Wicks, Diggs, Pacheco. Oh, this is tough. Man, I really want to say Wicks, but I also think that's I guess I would probably try to fire up Isaiah Pacheco one more time. I know Pacheco has not been very good. Their the Chiefs running the ball in general have been terrible, but I will say the Giants' run defense has been bad this year. It was bad last year. It's bad this year. They're missing like the majority of their linebackers here for this game. I think that is a big problem. I think Isaiah Pacheco could score a touchdown here. I would go with Pacheco. I don't love it. I think next after that for me though would be Dontavian Wicks, but that's probably a little bit thin considering what you have. JR, what's up? Sorry I'm late. I am in a half-point PPR league. I have Ibuka going, who is supposedly on a snap count. I don't ever really buy that stuff. I don't even know what that means, just because really what matters is how many times he's going to be targeted. Like he could play, let's say they play let's say they have 60 plays and he plays 30 of them. Well, he could still be targeted 7 or 8 times in those, So like I don't think that that's like something I want to spend too much time worrying about. In terms of your other options, though, you have Hampton, Junkins, Ridley, or Stevenson. I probably would still roll Mecca Egbuka. If you're concerned with that, I would then go to Armari and Hampton. And I've kind of talked about this already, but if you were late, the Broncos have really, really struggled this year, especially interior to stop the run. We saw last week Jonathan Taylor absolutely torched him. Now, obviously, Jonathan Taylor, Amari and Hampton is not Jonathan Taylor at this point, so that is obvious. But this really could be a really solid bounce back spot for Amari and Hampton. But it is obviously a lot of risk involved there. I think I would just go with the guy who's produced each of the last 2 weeks in Emeka Egbuka. Goddard or Fannin. This is easily Fannin for me. Instead, I have him as my tight end 12. I really think he's in a really good spot today. Murray, Stafford, or Rogers to start today. I do like Stafford, but I would still go with Kyler Murray here. I think still Kyler Murray's a top 12 quarterback play. He's running the ball a little bit higher rate this year than he has been. The 49ers defense is solid, but I don't think this is a spot there that Kyler Murray can't rack up some points here. So I would go with Kyler Murray here of those quarterbacks. Scott, Goff, or Nix, and then Jamo, Ridley, Junkins, or Quinshawn, or Quentin Johnson, full PPR. This spot really worries me for Jared Goff. Just playing on the road, outdoors has always been a problem for Jared Goff. Ravens defense, and I will say the Lions. I know they smoked the Bears last week, but that was also at home, and this is a different defense. The Ravens, their offensive line for the Lions really concerns me with all the pieces. I mean, Frank Ragnow retired, and so it does worry me for Jared Goff. I would go Bo Nix. I have Bo Nix at QB 14, and I have Jared Goff at 16. I would go with Nix, and then at wide receiver, I probably go Jameson Williams, and I say that because of his ability to break off long runs, be able to score touchdowns. They use him as a runner as well. I don't mind Junkins. I wouldn't be surprised if they utilize him even more, but I hate the matchup against the Packers. And then Ridley. I actually think Ridley is probably the most interesting one of them all here in a matchup against the Colts. But just with the way Cam Ward has played for the most part, I would still lean towards Jameson Williams and hope that he can score a touchdown. George for the flex, non-PPR. Travion Henderson, Harvey, Tootin, Ridley, or Golden. So we're looking for touchdowns. I think I would go with Calvin Ridley here. And I normally would lean running back, but none of these guys are in good spots. Henderson or Harvey, extremely limited workloads. Tootin, though, I think is probably the other option that we could look at. Golden could score a touchdown as well. But I just think Calvin Ridley would be one. I would then go Tootin 2, and then 3 would be Ridley. Knicks or Danny Dimes? It's going to be Danny Dimes. Here we are. I didn't think we'd be this excited about Daniel Jones, but I think he's a top 12 quarterback play this week. So I would go with Danny Dimes here. EC PPR. Would you rather roster for the bench Cedric Tillman or Rashid Shaheed? I would probably go with Rashid Shaheed over Tillman. I just think there's going to come a point that when they're going to bench Joe Flacco, and I don't know what this offense looks like without Joe Flacco. I know Joe Flacco is not good, but like he's good for fantasy purposes, anyways. But it sounds like Flacco's days might be limited, and then after that, I don't know what to expect. I'm not saying that Spencer Rattler is great, but at least he's been able to make some of these guys fantasy relevant, and so I would go with Rashid Shaheed there. Joseph, hey, TFA, longtime listener. Happy football Sunday to you. Star sit Ertz or Hockenson and Jameson Williams or T. Higgins full PPR. I'm going to go with T. Higgins there over Jameson Williams. And then at tight end, I'm going to go with Zach Ertz. I do think Hawkinson's interesting, but I just don't know how many pieces Carson Wentz can make relevant here. And so I feel pretty confident with Justin Jefferson. I think Hawkinson could be more involved, but he's just been awful so far to start the year, and I would go with Zach Ertz. Victor Henderson or Juckins? I'm gonna go Juckins here. I would love to say Travion Henderson, but until I see a little bit more of a higher workload here, he really struggled last week too. I mean, he had 3 offensive holding calls against him, put him in the doghouse. I just can't trust it. I will just go with the guy that I know that's going to get more opportunity, and that's Quinshon Judkins. And then KD, Pickens or Sutton at flex. I'm going to go with George Pickens here. Again, highest total on the slate. I mean, George Pickens came through at the end of last game, scored that touchdown, but I really love this spot. So I would go with George Pickens here over Cortland Sutton. And then, Michael, do I start Ekbuka or my options are Wicks, Diggs, or Renfro? I'll say it again. I absolutely love Dontavian Wicks this week. I like him well more than consensus. I have him at wide receiver 37, but I would still go Ekbuka. I lowered it down a little bit because of some of the news, but I I have no idea what the snap count stuff is. Like, I feel like more often than not, that stuff is useless and it's usually wrong. And so, unless they just get up really quickly and really, which is possible against the Jets, and really just they run away with this game early, would be the only concern that Bucky gets there and some other stuff happen and they're up 28-7, 21-7, whatever going into the half. Maybe they limit Akuka at that point, knowing that they have this game well in hand is the only concern. But Wicks would be the other one that I would go with if you didn't feel comfortable going. Yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, so I know it's easy, but like if you go back to 2023 and look at Jake Browning's production, whenever he was starting, then for them, I mean, they're not changing this offense. This offense last week, once Jake Browning came in, was the same as when they run it with Joe Burrow. Like they're not going to change anything with Jake Browning. They like Jake Browning as a backup quarterback, and Jake Browning in 2023, I think he had in the 7 starts he had. I think I think he scored like 20 fantasy points, and I'm gonna look real quick, in like 3 of those games. And like he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. Like he is not somebody that like Zach Wilson can put in as a quarterback. So even last week, I mean, last week, which he came in, didn't even play the entire game. He still scored 20. He still scored 20 fantasy points last week. Now you can say, well, that was against Jacksonville, but Jacksonville's defense has actually been decent so far this year. But if you go back to 2023, he scored 26 fantasy points, 24 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 17, 21, and 19 fantasy points in those 7 games that he started. Like he is a more than competent backup quarterback, and so I don't think this offense changes a lot. Is Higgins, is he a little bit lower than what I would have for Joe Burrow in there? Sure, because I would have T. Higgins as like a top 15 wide receiver this week. But I still think with Jake Browning at quarterback, this team's going to be fine. And so I don't think there's a huge drop off between this in terms of how the offense is going to look and how the offense is going to perform. And so I would still go with Higgins over Jameson Williams. So Dylan Sampson, yeah, Dylan Sampson's going to be involved in the passing game. Like Junkins isn't. Like Junkins is likely not going to be involved in the passing game. Sampson will be, and so there's going to be way more where they're going to be trailing game scripts where they're going to have to throw the ball where Dylan Sampson's going to be involved. We buy homes, not PPR. I'm playing against Caleb and Bijan this week, so need upside. Should I start Danny Dimes or Kyler Murray? I mean, if you're shooting for straight upside, it's crazy to say, but it's Daniel Jones. I mean, Daniel Jones has been phenomenal. He's averaging 25 fantasy points over his last 2 starts. And so it would be Danny Dimes, and Kyler Murray has the higher floor. Ekbuka or T. Higgins and the flex, non-PPR. Non-PPR, I probably go with T. Higgins just because of his ability to score a touchdown. Now, obviously, Ekbuka has scored touchdowns back-to-back weeks, but I think I would probably go with Higgins there for that one. Joseph, appreciate the super chat. Thanks for a lot of that info. Yeah, I think sometimes people just look at it and say, "Oh, it's the backup quarterback. This team's going to be terrible," and I mean, from what we've seen from Jake Browning, has been the opposite of that. He has been actually really solid as a fantasy quarterback. And all the times that he's got to play. And like I said, like they're not going to change the way they do stuff within this offense. So just because it's Jake Browning, so I think there's still a lot to like here within the offense. Oh, Mike, Ladd or Igbokwe? So this is Ladd McConkey. I like this spot for Ladd. I think Ladd is going to play a lot in the slot. I think you're going to see Keenan Allen a lot in the slot. I think Pastor Tan Quentin Johnson is going to draw the Pastor Tan coverage. So I think Ladd and I think Keenan Allen are going to be the two. They're going to be looking to get the ball in their hands. So I would go with Ladd McConkey over Emeka Igbokwe here in this spot. So anyways, I think that is the last question that we have here. So appreciate all the support. Want to jump on really quickly. We usually go live every Sunday, but with baseball for the next couple of weeks, because I coach baseball on the weekends, and so it's harder for me to do it. But we were off this weekend, so I wanted to get on here and do that. We will be live again tonight, though, for week 4 waivers. We'll be live again, getting all the waiver stuff answered, and then we're going to change the format. I kind of talked about it. We're going to change the format. We're going to release defenses and kickers together instead of separating them. So that should be out either Monday or Tuesday morning, depending on when we can get that done, and all the other regular content will be after that. So appreciate everybody here. Appreciate all the questions. Good luck for week 3. Let's get some W's today. And good luck. And we'll be back in tonight to answer all of the, get all the waiver stuff handled. Hopefully there's not a lot of injuries. So Porter, you jumped in right at the last second. I'm going to go with Marcus Mariota. You can go back and listen to why I already had a very similar question. I think it was the exact same question, but Marcus Mariota would be the guy. QB 13 for me this week. So appreciate it. Got to go build some lineups real quick for DFS. Enjoy your week. Enjoy today. Hopefully we avoid a lot of injuries. See you on the next one. Bye.